It's Thursday, September 4th, 2025. Apparently, obliterating narco-terrorists is offensive. To Epstein or not to Epstein? That is the question. And what is an American? One senator attempts to answer that very hard question next on the AM Update. Well, chalk it up to could have seen that coming. Apparently to some on the left and in the media, sorry for the redundancy, it was very offensive that the other day the United States military absolutely obliterated a boat carrying drugs that was produced by narco-terrorists from Venezuela. Secretary of State Marco Rubio addressed in no uncertain terms why the United States has the authority to take such action.
The President of the United States has determined that narco-terrorist organization pose a threat to the national security of the United States. I don't need to explain to you why. They are traffickers of people, they are traffickers of deadly drugs, they are traffickers of all kinds of illicit means, and they use the money that they generate to destabilize governments in the region, which in and of itself then poses a threat to the United States. So he has designated for what they are. They are narco-terrorist organizations. These are not stockbrokers. These are not real estate agents who on the side deal a few drugs. These are organized, corporate structured organizations who specialize in the trafficking of deadly drugs into the United States of America. They pose an immediate threat to the United States, period. If you're on a boat full of cocaine or fentanyl or whatever headed to the United States, you're an immediate threat to the United States. And the President, under his authority as Commander-in-Chief, has a right under exigent circumstances to eliminate imminent threats to the United States, and that's what he did yesterday in international waters, and that's what he intends to do. We're not going to sit back anymore and watch these people sail up and down the Caribbean like a cruise ship. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen anymore.
So I'm not sure why, other than just everything that President Trump does is evil. But there were seriously people in the media and on the left saying, "Oh, they didn't deserve to be blown to smithereens. You could have just apprehended." No. They have the authority to do so, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio lays that out in great detail. Also announced yesterday, as a quick aside, the Department of Justice, along with various federal law enforcement, announced the seizure of just gallons upon gallons, hundreds of gallons of methamphetamine precursor sent from China to Mexico. In other news, Vice President J.D. Vance went to Minneapolis, Minnesota yesterday to pay his respects and show his support for the victims of the Annunciation School shooter. Here he is on the tarmac, getting ready to board back on Air Force Two.
I have never had a day that will stay with me like this day did, because I really felt like these parents, in the midst of the worst grief of their entire lives, they opened up their lives and they opened up their hearts and they made me part of it. So I'd ask a couple of things, straight from the parents and straight from the families to my fellow Americans. First of all, while 2 kids lost their lives, there's still 1 kid that's in very serious condition, and every single family, the family of Lydia, who luckily recovered, but we visited her in the hospital, the family of the 2 who died, Harper and Fletcher, all 3 of those families said, please say a prayer. So to my fellow Americans, if you're the praying type, say a prayer for this innocent girl who's actually in surgery right now, that the swelling will go down, that she will be okay, because she's still in a fight for her life, and every single family to a person is desperate that the death toll, which currently is at 2, stays at 2. And I think if you're a praying type, you ought to say a prayer for this innocent young girl.
Amen. There's Vice President J.D. Vance in the aftermath of his visit, paying respects to the victims of and showing support for the victims of the Annunciation School shooting. Well, back in Washington, D.C., in Congress, House Speaker Mike Johnson says when President Trump called him recently to discuss the idea of a midterm political convention, he thought that's genius. The idea is to give Republicans a chance to make their case to voters who tend to reject the party in power during the midterm cycles. Republicans, of course, are struggling as it stands now to hold on to their majority in Congress. The speaker added, quote, Trump loves a big show. They're working with Senate Republican leader John Thune to make it happen. He told reporters, quote, I think it's a done deal. This stems from an August 28th Truth Social post wherein President Trump came up with the idea of having a midterm Republican National Convention. I actually agree with Trump and Johnson. That's a very, very good idea. You know, this is a really dead period of the year, especially if they had it in July, like you would typically expect to see a political convention, a political party convention. It's a really dead part of the year, news-wise. Doing that in the dead of summer when there's nothing else going on and touting everything that this administration has done just a few months before the election, Great idea. Well, also a great idea, hiring Tom Homan as border czar. Here he is at the American Conservative Conference this week. I should say the National Conservatism Conference this week, where he discusses just what he and the Trump administration have done on the issue of border security.
They always say the Trump administration is inhumane. I'm a racist, supposedly. I'm a white nationalist. I read it all. I'm a terrorist. Whatever you want to call me. I don't give a shit what people think about me. Never have.
And that's why we love Tom Homan. In other news, to Epstein or not to Epstein, I'm about to completely tap out on any facet of the story whatsoever. I told you about yesterday, 33,000 pages of documents pertaining to a subpoena by James Comer of the House Oversight Committee. The Department of Justice produced those 33,000 plus documents. Apparently 97% of them are already made public, blah, 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 blah. And now yesterday there was some sort of shindig outside of the Capitol featuring victims. Well, yes, I have never seen or heard of a lot of these individuals, victims of Epstein. Here is Trump in the Oval Office yesterday talking about what he calls an ongoing hoax.
Is the Justice Department protecting any friends or donors, sir? So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. You know, it reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given. But it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success.
Well, over on MSNBC, I'm sorry, this is supposed to be NBC News now, whatever they're calling it now, they had a panel, apparently, of Epstein victims, Again, never heard of these people, never seen these people before, never seen a panel of Epstein victims on the television. And the host on NBC News asked this panel if they had ever seen Donald Trump in a compromising position. Again, this just happened yesterday.
I do have to ask, and I know, and it's just something that I think we're compelled to at this moment, with the attention on President Trump, with these questions around a pardon, did anybody see or hear of the president himself doing anything inappropriate as it related to Jeffrey Epstein?
No.
So there's the panel saying no. No. So I want justice for what victims, legitimate victims there are. But this thing is just, this has gone from what seemed to be a pretty cut and dry cover-up situation, pretty cut and dry, this guy is a deep state asset, to there's just 500 different trails that I feel like we're chasing our tails trying to catch. It's just a mess. Well, something that is not a mess is the health department in the state of Florida. Surgeon General Joe Ladapo made a big announcement yesterday that I'm sure will be music to the ears of many families, not only in Florida, but across the country.
The Florida Department of Health, in partnership with the governor, is going to be working to end all vaccine mandates in Florida law. All of them. All of them. All of them.
So no more vaccine mandates for school children in the state of Florida. That doesn't mean that if you want vaccines, you can't get them. But the parental choice is back. And it's hopefully back to stay in the Sunshine State. Once again, leading the way, one of the finest run states in the Union. Probably the finest run state in the Union. And that's the way it should be. If you want access to vaccines, you should be able to get them as long as they're proven to not be harmful. But they should absolutely not be a requirement. And they no longer are in the state of Florida. We will stay down there in that same press conference where Surgeon General Joe Ladapo made that big announcement. It was also announced that somebody named Paul Renner is running for governor of Florida. As I understand it, Mr. Renner is a rhino of all rhinos. Well, Governor Ron DeSantis, current Governor Ron DeSantis, was asked about the entry of Paul Renner into the gubernatorial race. Here's what he had to say.
Entered the race, your reaction to that, and will you make an endorsement at all in the governor's race?
The race for what?
Governor.
Governor of what?
Florida.
Look, yeah, I'm not supporting Paul Renner. You know,
that son of a gun. Are you going to make an endorsement of the governor's race? DeSantis. The race for what? Governor. Governor of what? Florida. Oh, yeah, no. That guy still has a little bit of moxie in him. Well, when we come back, an update on the status of the relationship between two very well-known and prominent individuals. Also, there's a viral outbreak of death in one European country, and what is an American? We'll explore all that and more next.
Well, I don't think he has a choice. So what's he going to do? He's going to go with the radical left lunatics? You know, they're lunatics. I don't think he has a choice. He's a man of common sense. He's a good man. He got off the reservation incorrectly, and that's okay because, you know, it's just one of those things. But he's a good person. He's got, 80% super genius, and then 20% he's got some problems. And when he works out the 20%, he'll be great.
There is President Trump providing a status update on he and Elon Musk's relationship. He made those comments on the Scott Jennings radio program. It sounds like there is some sort of an olive branch being extended. And that is one of President Trump's skills, is that, yes, there are people who oppose him and oppose him very, very strongly, but he never shuts the door on individuals all the way. There's always an opportunity. Now, there are going to be consequences if you crash out and claim President Trump's on the Epstein list. Probably not getting invited back to the White House anytime soon, but at least you're not going to completely ruin that relationship. Well, 4 candidates and 2 reserves from the Alternative for Germany political party in Germany. That is their actual right-wing political party. 4 candidates and 2 reserves have just dropped dead within 13 days of each other. Less than 2 weeks. 6 candidates, 4 candidates, 2 alternates. Within 13 days, just dropping dead. Right before elections. The Alternative for Deutschland candidates, who were set to appear on ballots in North Rhine-Westphalia on September 14th. Officials said no foul play is currently expected or suspected in their deaths. That's according to the BBC. Ralph Lang, a 66-year-old, Wolfgang Klinger, a 71-year-old, Stefan Berendez, a 59-year-old, Wolfgang Seitz, a 59-year-old, all kicked the bucket within 2 weeks of each other. The 2 reserve candidates also died over the same period. German officials stated that 2 of the deaths were a result of natural causes, but have not commented on the cause of the others. Now, of course, what jumps off the page are the ages of all of these candidates. 2 of them are 59 years old. That's kind of uncommon. The other 2, late 60s, early 70s. It would not be uncommon for some sort of cardiac event to target that kind of age range. But 6 candidates within 13 days, and they all happen to be from the same right-wing political party? Get out of here with that. And now here's this. I do like me some Malcolm Gladwell. He is a prolific author and speaker. I've characterized him here on this show as a dumb person's idea of a genius. I don't think he's a genius. I just think he's a talented storyteller and researcher, and he's very talented at both of those areas. Well, he was on a panel not that long ago, I think within the last couple of years, where he stated he's okay with dudes competing against women, your daughters, on women's sports teams. Well, in a big act of contrition, and it is an act of contrition, and we should give him credit for that, recently he said he's ashamed of that stance.
If we did a replay of that exact panel at the Sloan Conference this coming March, it runs in exactly the opposite direction. And it would be, I suspect, near unanimity in the room that trans athletes have no place in the female category. I don't think there's any question. I just think it was a strange. The reason I'm ashamed of my performance at that panel because I share your position 100%, and I was cowed. The idea of saying anything on this issue, I was I believe in retrospect, in a dishonest way. I was objective in a dishonest way.
So there is Malcolm Gladwell, author and speaker, stating that he was cowed into taking the wrong position on the issue of dudes and women's sports and saying that he's even ashamed of that position. Now, number one, I still think Malcolm Gladwell is a very interesting author. He has, again, really interesting things to say, and he is talented at telling stories. I want to just say that because it's going to sound like I'm being hard on him next. But on matters of morality, his voice is forever forgotten. On matters of great societal import, involving morality. This dude got the fundamental truth of creation, male and female, he created. He got that wrong. He got that wrong. So I appreciate his contrition. I really do. But he should not be listened to on matters of morality in the future. However, this is another good sign on the issue of the transgender, so-called transgender debate. I mean, Malcolm Gladwell is like a metrosexual, Greenwich Village living New York hipster, very refined in tastes and what have you. And that dude just said he's ashamed of saying that dudes could compete in female athletics. I think that's a really good sign. What also is a really good sign is more people are asking the question, what is an American? Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri recently addressed, again, the National Conservatism Conference, where he attempted to address this very question. Listen to this.
The Continental Army soldiers dying of frostbite at Valley Forge. The Pilgrims struggling to survive in the hard winter soil of Plymouth. The pioneers striking out from Missouri for the wild and dangerous frontier. The outnumbered Kentucky settlers repelling wave after wave of Indian war band attacks from beyond the stockade walls. All of them will be astonished to hear that they were only fighting for a proposition. They believed they were fighting for a nation, a homeland for themselves and their descendants. They fought, they bled, they struggled, they died for us. They built this country for us. America, in all its glory, is their gift to us, handed down across the generations. It belongs to us. It's our birthright. It's our heritage, our destiny. If America is everything and everyone, then it is nothing and no one at all. When they tear down our statues and monuments, mock our history, and insult our traditions, they're attacking our future as well as our past. By changing the stories we tell about ourselves, they believe they can build a new America with the new myths, a new people. But America doesn't belong to them. It belongs to us. It's our home. It's a heritage entrusted to us by our ancestors. It's a way of life that is ours and only ours. If we disappear, then America too will cease to exist.
That is Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri addressing National Conservatism Conference on the question of what is an American. I think we're finally starting to get the answer to the question, what is a woman, right? If even Malcolm Gladwell not only reverses course, but says he's ashamed of the position that he once took. Now we can tackle a little bit more complicated questions like, what is an American? And I'm glad senators, that's not some podunk congressman, although we need congressmen talking about this as well. That's a senator from Missouri attempting to address this question head on. And make no mistake, to the left, what he just said there is incredibly offensive. Incredibly offensive. So that's good. We need to define what an American is next. America is not just an economic zone, a dumping ground for all of the world's chattel. That's immoral. It's immoral to them. It's immoral to people made in the image and likeness of God. And our elites, and that includes our senators, need to start understanding that. Well, when we come back, one final segment, it'll be our poll of the week. I asked you whether or not you support a war against the cartels. There are some pretty interesting answers, and I think some very wise answers as well. That's coming up next. And finally, our poll of the week. I asked you, would you support a full-blown kinetic war against the drug cartels? I gave you 4 options, as always. Other comments below. We'll get to those in just a little bit. Yes, no, and it's way more complicated. In fourth place, it's other comment below. We'll get to those in a minute. In third place, it's no, I would not support a full-blown kinetic war against the cartels. That's 3.8%. In second place, it's way more complicated at 28.2% than simple, do you support a war against the cartels? And in first place, yes, 66.4% say, yes, I would support a full-blown kinetic war against the cartels. Let's get to what you have to say. Jeff says it's complicated. First, we would have to get them out of the U.S. Then, if we want to go after them elsewhere, we'd need full cooperation with the nations that have them, which currently we don't. Also, a clear and achievable end state needs to be established. 150% agree with that last sentence there. clear, achievable end state needs to be established. Absolutely. That is very important. The second part, I'm not sure if I totally agree with. If we want to go after them elsewhere, we'd need full cooperation with the nations that have them, which we currently don't. I don't know. If we have an opportunity to take out leadership in these cartels, we know where they are and we know what they're doing, and there is a 99% chance of success or 85% chance of success, I say screw what Mexico or what Colombia or what Venezuela thinks of us. But I do agree, that's what I voted for. It's more complicated than just, yes, let's just declare war on the cartels. Johnny Bourbon says 2 things that tried to avoid immigration and customs enforcement and ended up at the bottom of the seas: cartels and the Titanic. Hopefully you're right about that, although it's sad about the second part. Aaron says, as long as it involves kinetic sand, I'm in. Okay. Bama Conservative says, the cartels do. Why shouldn't we? That's a good point. They've already declared war. For 40 years, they've been declaring war on this country. By continuing to feed, yes, there is a demand, but there is a supply, thanks to them, just heinous drugs. Regular Dirk says, as long as it's kinetic defense, I don't think we should be invading another country unless it's clear the home government is supportive of us or complicit with the cartels. See, I think maybe this is what Jeff was trying to get at as well. In some of these countries like Mexico and Venezuela, is there any delineation between the cartels and the government? Is there really? Or are the cartels really the government? They may have a show government, but the cartels are really the ones running the show. See, if that's the case, to me, I don't really think we need cooperation with the government, because the government is just the face of the cartels, just an official face. So who cares? Basically, when you're talking to that country's government, let's say it's Mexico, and the cartels are really behind that government. It's just a puppet government of the cartels, de facto even. When you're talking to the government and trying to get their support, you're talking to the cartel. What sense does that make? Brian Moss says, I voted for complicated, but as I thought about why, the case for America going to full-scale war against the cartels is way stronger than Iraq or Afghanistan. Exactly correct. Yes, it's in our sphere of influence. They pose an immediate threat, as Marco Rubio pointed out earlier. So I agree with that. Dalton Bell, I love this response. It's snarky, but it's not snarky for snark's sake. So easy for me to say. Snarky for snark's sake. Dalton says, which future war or terrorist action would this create, going to war with the cartels? See, that's a question that has not been asked very often when it comes to our military and, our geopolitical calculus. You look at the power vacuum that the war in Iraq and, to some degree, Afghanistan left in the Middle East. What did that give rise to? What did we do? Second, third, fourth order planning? And I know it's a fallen world. You cannot predict the future. But just a modicum of, hey, what are the second, third, fourth order effects? What could there be here? Are we ultimately going to make this region more destabilized and more hostile by doing X, Y, and Z action? So, Dalton, I think your question is not only snotty, but it's very wise, to be honest. And you didn't say, no, this means we should not go, or yes, it means we should go to war with cartels. You're just asking a wise question. And finally, we'll go to For Truth, who says, I know Mexico isn't much of a military threat, but attacks on drug and trafficking cartels to be effective will mean strikes in Mexico. That carries collateral human and possibly governments engaged in war downside effects. Well, yes, that is true. And I think what you're going to see the cartels doing now, especially what we saw this week, they're going to start using human shields to do their activities. And there's going to have to be some more judicious shows of force, I think. But ultimately, I mean, the cartels, they don't value human life the way that we do, or at least we think that we do here in this country. Some great responses, and that's going to do it for Thursday. Ask or Tell Me Anything tomorrow. Make your submissions over at Real AM Update on X. You can ask me any question you want. Tell me any news story you think needs covered on the AM Update. Have a great Thursday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.